All right, hopefully this is our last video. In this video, I would like to continue on with implementing our database functions into our routes. And so let's jump over to our code. So in the last video, we focused on displaying all of our records. And so we called this get all items, and we added that to our, we created a require statement and said const db operations that gives us access to the exported functions. One of those exported functions is get all items, and we passed in the response object so that we can actually respond back to the client, but we're doing that from the database.js file. The next one I want to focus on is this create item. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do something very similar to what we did for this function, but this time here we're going to receive information from the front end, from the client. And what we're going to do is take a look at our form. So here, index HBS. So in our form here, which starts on line 36, we have the form, and this action and this method attribute are important. The action defines the route that we're going to trigger in our app.js, and the method is the way that it's going to be sent to our server, our app.js. In this case, is post. And so here you'll see that on line 28, we have a post request that we're listening for on this route of create item. So those are very similar. Well, these are the exact same thing. This, what we defined here on 28, and what's here on line, highlighted on line 36, should be the same. Now, what's important about this form and how we're going to send data to our server is this name attribute. So here we gave each one of our input elements, and this is just HTML element forms, input forms, and then we have a name, item, item count, and then we have a submit button. And so what we'll do is we'll use whatever is the value that's assigned to the name. We'll use that within the app.js to receive the value of what was specified or what was input into these input boxes. So if we save this and let's go back to our app.js, how do we get that information from the form? What we're going to do is we're going to define and pull out the values that had the name attribute. So here we're going to pull out items. I believe it was items count, items name, and item name, item count. And then it's going to be the request.body, because with post it sends it in the body over the network. With get it sends it through the URL as parameters in the URL. So if it was a get, you would do something such as req prams, right? But in this case it's body, and this is a fast and quick way to actually get access to the values that have the name attribute. All right, so we have that. We're going to define our method that we define for our database.js. It's going to put a comment here, and then we'll say db operations dot, and we'll say create items, and then within create items we're going to pass in these two values that we're getting from our name attributes. So item name, item count. And that goes across any other language. If you're doing any, whether it's PHP or whether it's ASP.NET, the name attribute is typically the attribute that you would use in your backend. So we'll say item name and then item count. So let's test this out. But before we do that, let's actually go ahead and do our delete item as well. And so with the delete item, if we look back at our HTML, one of the things I've done here is that I've added the ID as a value from when we are returning, when we actually output the values when we call the home page. And so whatever button they click will pass in the ID to the back end. So here's our grocery list. Oh, that's not it. And so whenever I click the delete button, it's going to also send the ID of the record that we want to delete, because that's important. We need that ID to know which item we want to get rid of. So let's go back to our code. And for this one here, I am going to call on the function. But first, let's go ahead and get the values. So const and the name of that was delete record. And I looked at the name attribute. Okay. And then here I'm going to do something very similar. I am going to DB operations dot delete item, and I'll pass in the delete record. And I'll save it. So here, let's go back to our database.js file, and the delete item. Because I'm passing in passing in a item from my app.js, or passing in an argument, I want to define what I'm passing in for my delete method here. So I'm passing in delete record. So I want to make sure that I define that as well in my database.js file. So delete. And then here, I'll just say record to delete. And this should work as intended, pretty much like it worked previously when we tested it out. So we'll save this and let's test out our application. I think everything looks good. I'll just get rid of that. We'll save it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start up our application. npm start, and go back to the web page. Let's refresh. All right, we're still getting our items. We can create an item. Let's say, let's go ahead and bring in cereal. We eat a lot of cereal, so let's put in 3 boxes, press submit. So here we have an error, which is DB operations create items. So let's take a look at what caused that. And one of the best ways to troubleshoot is to look at the terminal and see what is happening here. So on line 33, we have create items, item name, item count, and then we're going to make sure that we are actually defining what those are. Create items. I think that's it. We don't have a create items. There's a create item. There we go. So let's save that. And then now our application is still listening because we have Nodeman. And let's go back to our site. Let's try to submit that again. Okay. And let's look at our terminal to see what happened. Yep, it created. Now, one thing here is that we don't have like the automatic reload or refresh, or it won't display. But if we were to just go ahead and hit enter again, we should see serial 3. And so if we would hit enter another item, let's just say we want milk, and we only want one of those, and we should hit enter. And then here, if we refresh, we have milk. Let's test out our delete. So let's delete the milk, and let's see what happens here in our terminal. One row deleted. Yep, there we go. And if we refresh, you'll see that one is deleted. Now, we want to add in some aesthetics where once we actually press the delete, it'll automatically delete. And then once we actually enter an item, it'll automatically enter an item, and it'll show up on our list. Now, that's going to take some things, some more coding than I want to do at this point. More so, we can add that in. That's just more finesse in the application and giving some visual appeal, some aesthetics to it. But more so, I wanted to really focus on how all of these pieces fit together. So in the next video, I want to wrap up by talking about handlebars.js and then what resource you can actually look at to kind of get a good feel for how to use handlebars.js. So stay tuned for that last video.